The year was 2347, and humanity had spread across 12 worlds beyond Earth, building colonies among the stars and dreaming of a future filled with wonder and discovery. But humanity was small in a galaxy ruled by giants. The Valorian Concord controlled everything worth controlling, and they had done so for 10,000 years before humans ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. 200 alien species made up the Concord, ancient civilizations with technology that made human ships look like toys and weapons that could crack moons in. Half they watched humanity crawl into space the way a man might watch ants building a hill in his garden. With mild amusement and complete indifference, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport of her small diplomatic vessel and stared at the blockade surrounding the human colony of New Helsinki 30. Concord warships hung in the darkness like predators circling wounded prey, their hulls gleaming with energy shields that human weapons could never hope to penetrate. "They want our jump drive technology," her aide whispered beside her. Fear making his voice shake, Elena nodded slowly, her jaw tight with anger she could not afford to show. Concord had decided that humans were too primitive and too dangerous to possess faster than light travel, and they had come to take it away like adults confiscating a sharp knife from a child. "The High Arbiter has summoned you to the Sara Prime," the communications officer announced from behind her. "He demands you answer for humanity's crimes against galactic peace." Elena almost laughed at that, but there was nothing funny about any of this. She traveled to the Sara Prime aboard a Concord escort ship because they would not allow her to bring her own vessel into their sacred space. The journey took 3 days, and during that time she prepared her arguments and her pleas and her desperate hope that reason might somehow prevail. Grand Chamber of the Concord was the largest enclosed space Elena had ever seen, a dome of crystal and light that could have held a dozen human stadiums inside its walls. Thousands of alien delegates filled the viewing galleries, their strange eyes and stranger faces all turned toward the small human woman who stood alone on the speaking platform. High Arbiter Calverth towered above her on his throne of living metal, his scaled face twisted into an expression of contempt that needed no translation. "You come before us as a beggar," he announced, his voice booming through the chamber. "Your species has violated the natural order by developing technology beyond your station, and now you will surrender it or face the consequences." Elena lifted her chin and spoke clearly into the translation device. "The people of Earth seek only peace and friendship with the Concord," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "We developed our technology through our own hard work and sacrifice, and we ask only to be treated as equals in this great galactic community." Laughter erupted from the galleries, thousands of alien voices mocking her words with cruel amusement. Calverth silenced them with a wave of his clawed hand. "Equals," he repeated, savoring the word like it was the funniest thing he had ever heard. "Little human, your entire species has existed for less time than I have held this throne, and you speak to me of equality?" He leaned forward, his golden eyes burning with ancient pride. "You are not our equals, and you never will be. So take this message back to your frightened little world, surrender your technology, and accept your place as a protected species under Concord guidance. Or we will teach you the true meaning of consequences." Elena opened her mouth to respond, but guards were already dragging her from the platform while the galleries erupted in cheers and applause. They kept her in a detention cell for 6 days while they broadcast recordings of her humiliation across 200 worlds. Aliens who had never seen a human before watched and laughed at the tiny pink creature who thought she could stand among the giants. And while Elena sat in her cell and tried not to weep, the Concord fleet at New Helsinki received new orders. The colony had to be pacified as a demonstration of Concord power. A lesson that all primitive species needed to learn eventually. Admiral Thress of the Cavalry commanded the operation personally, and he made sure every moment was recorded for the educational archives. The shields around New Helsinki fell in less than an hour, and then the bombardment began. 12 million humans lived on that world, farmers and teachers and children and dreamers who had traveled across the stars to build new lives on a new frontier. The Concorde killed them all. They did not invade or occupy or demand surrender, because that would have suggested the humans were worth negotiating with. Instead, they simply erased the colony from existence, turning cities into craters and forests into ash and oceans into steam that rose up to choke the burning sky when it was over. Admiral Thress recorded a message for the Galactic Archives. Let this serve as a reminder to all lesser species, he declared proudly. The Concorde's patience is not unlimited, and those who forget their place will be reminded of it most forcefully. They released Elena the next day and sent her home with footage of the massacre loaded onto her personal device. Show this to your leaders, the guard told her as she boarded the transport. Show them what happens to species who dream too big. Elena watched the footage during the long journey back to Earth, and something inside her changed with every image of death and destruction. By the time she reached home, her tears had dried, and her fear had transformed into something colder and harder and infinitely more dangerous. The United Terran Council convened in emergency session 3 hours after her arrival, and Elena stood before them with the massacre still playing on the screens behind her. They killed 12 million people, she said quietly. They killed them to make a point, to teach us a lesson, to remind us that we are nothing. The council members sat in horrified silence, their faces pale with grief and rage. Admiral Marcus Cole rose from his seat at the back of the chamber, his uniform crisp and his expression unreadable. He was an old man with white hair and steady hands, and he had commanded Earth's defense forces for 30 years without ever firing a shot in anger. Ambassador Vasquez, he said calmly, do we warn them first? Elena stared at him for a long moment, and something passed between them that the other council members could not quite understand. Yes, she finally answered. We warn them once, and then we show them exactly who they have chosen as their enemy. Admiral Cole nodded slowly and turned to leave the chamber. He had preparations to make and a fleet to wake from its long slumber beneath the Antarctic ice. The giants of the galaxy had made a terrible mistake, and humanity was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. 3 days after the massacre at New Helsinki, every communication device in the known galaxy received the same message at the same moment, came in every language that the translators could process, broadcast on every frequency that technology could reach. And it spoke with a voice that was calm and cold and absolutely certain. To the Valorian Concorde and all species who serve beneath its banner, this is the United Terran Council speaking on behalf of all humanity across 200 worlds. Aliens paused in their daily routines and turned toward their screens with expressions of curiosity and confusion. What could the primitives possibly have to say after such a thorough demonstration of their helplessness? You have taken 12 million of our children from us, the message continued. You murdered them not in war but in arrogance, not in necessity but in cruelty. Not because they threatened you, but because you wanted to teach us our place. High Arbiter Kelvareth watched the broadcast from his throne room on the Sar Prime, a smile spreading across his scaled face. This was going to be entertaining. We do not accept the lesson you have tried to teach us, the human voice declared. We reject your authority over our people, your judgment of our worth, and your vision of a galaxy where the strong may slaughter the weak without consequence. The smile on Calvareth's face grew wider. Therefore, we issue the following demands to the Valorian Concorde. You will withdraw all military forces from human space immediately. You will pay full reparations to the families of those you murdered on New Helsinki. You will publicly apologize for your crimes against our people. And you will recognize humanity as a sovereign species with full rights under galactic law. Laughter erupted in the throne room as Calvarus's advisors and generals struggled to contain their amusement. You have 30 standard cycles to comply with these demands. The message concluded. This is humanity's final warning, and there will not be another. The broadcast ended. And for a moment there was silence in the throne room before the laughter returned even louder than before. Did they just threaten us? Admiral Thras asked through his cackling. Did those tiny creatures just demand that we apologize to them? Calvareth raised his clawed hand for silence. Still grinning with pure delight. Record my response and broadcast it across the same channels, he commanded. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this. He leaned forward on his throne and spoke directly into the recording device. Little humans, your courage is almost admirable in its stupidity, but courage alone cannot win wars. And you have no fleet worth mentioning, and no weapons we have not already surpassed 10,000 years ago. He spread his arms wide to encompass the grandeur of his throne room. You have 30 cycles to surrender your jump drive technology and accept Concord protection. Or we will visit upon Earth the same lesson we taught your colony. Except this time, we will not stop until every human world is glass and every human ship is dust. He smiled directly at the recording device. Go back to your caves, little humans, and pray that we are merciful. The response spread across the galaxy, even faster than the original human message. And soon every inhabited world was laughing at the absurd bravery of the doomed species alien. Entertainers made jokes about human demands. Alien children played games where they pretended to be the foolish primitives who challenged the mighty Concord. And alien scholars gave interviews explaining exactly why humanity stood no chance against the greatest military power in galactic history. But on Earth, no one was laughing deep beneath the Antarctic ice. In caverns that had been carved out centuries ago and hidden from every scanner and satellite and spy, Admiral Marcus Cole walked through the largest shipyard that humanity had ever built. Project Prometheus stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. A secret that every human government had protected for 300 years through lies and misdirection. And carefully cultivated weakness. The Concord believed that humanity had stumbled into space travel by accident, that their technology was primitive and their military laughable. They believed this because humanity had wanted them to believe it. How long until the fleet is ready? Cole asked the chief engineer who walked beside him. 72 hours. Admiral, she replied, her eyes bright with anticipation. All 10,000 ships will be combat-ready and waiting for your orders. Cole nodded and continued walking past rows of warships that gleamed with impossible technology. These were not the clumsy vessels that humanity showed to the galaxy. The slow and weak ships that aliens mocked in their entertainment programs. These were something else entirely. The engines used principles of physics that Concord scientists had declared impossible, allowing them to move through dimensions that other species did not even know existed. The weapons could tear holes in reality itself, bypassing shields and armor as if they were not there. Soldiers who crewed these vessels had been enhanced beyond the limits of normal biology. Their reflexes faster than thought, and their bodies capable of surviving conditions that would kill any unmodified human. 300 years. Cole murmured as he looked up at the fleet that would soon change everything. 300 years of hiding and waiting and pretending to be weak. He thought of New Helsinki and the 12 million people who had died never knowing that their species could have saved them. That guilt would stay with him forever. But he had made peace with it long ago. Humanity had needed time to prepare, time to build, time to become something that could not just survive in this hostile galaxy, but dominate it completely. "The Concorde thinks we are ants," he said quietly. "They think they can step on us whenever they choose, and we will simply accept our fate." He turned to face his officers, men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "In 30 cycles, we will show them exactly what kind of ants we are on the Sara Prime." Calvareth watched the countdown timer on his display and felt nothing but satisfaction. The humans had been silent since their laughable ultimatum, probably cowering in fear as they realized the magnitude of their mistake. When the timer reached 0, he would give the order that would end the human species forever. The 30th cycle arrived with the setting of the Sara's twin suns, and Calvareth raised his hand to signal his communications officer. "Open a channel to the fleet," he commanded. "It is time to..." Every alarm in the throne room screamed to life at once. "What is happening?" Calvareth demanded. Rising from his throne in confusion, his tactical officer stared at his display with an expression of pure disbelief. "Ships." "High Arbiter," he whispered. "Thousands of ships appearing from nowhere around every military installation in Concorde space. That is impossible." Calvareth roared. "No species has the capability to... They are human ships." "High Arbiter," the officer continued, his voice trembling. "Over 10,000 of them. And they are surrounding every fleet, every shipyard, every defense platform we possess." Calvareth stared at the tactical display as red icons multiplied across the map of Concorde space, each one representing a human vessel that should not exist. "How?" he breathed. "How is this possible?" His communication console activated, and a human face appeared on the screen. An old man with white hair and eyes as cold as the void between stars. "High Arbiter Calvareth," Admiral Marcus Cole said calmly. "Your 30 cycles have expired, and you have not complied with our demands." He paused and let the silence stretch for a long moment. "You were warned." The transmission ended, and across the galaxy, humanity's hidden fleet opened fire. The first hour of what the galaxy would later call the reckoning began with silence and ended with screaming. Admiral Thress of the Cavalry stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the impossible happen. Human ships moved through his fleet like ghosts, their black hulls sliding between his warships with a grace that defied everything he knew about physics and combat and the nature of war itself. "Fire!" he screamed at his weapons officers. "Fire everything we have." 1,000 Concorde vessels unleashed their arsenals simultaneously, filling the void with enough destructive energy to shatter a moon. The human ships did not even bother to dodge. Energy beams and missiles and plasma bolts passed through the space where the enemy vessels should have been, hitting nothing but vacuum as the humans seemed to flicker in and out of existence itself. "What kind of technology is this?" Thress demanded, his confidence crumbling with every passing second. "Unknown, Admiral," his tactical officer replied with terror in his voice. "Our sensors cannot track them properly, and our weapons cannot lock onto their signatures." The human ships stopped flickering and became solid again, and Thress realized with dawning horror that they had simply been playing with him. Then they fired back. The weapons that the humans used did not behave like any weapons that Concorde science had ever imagined. Beams of twisted light tore through shields as if they did not exist, punching holes through hull plating that should have been impervious to anything short of a supernova. Ships that had survived 1,000 battles exploded in seconds, their crews never even understanding what had killed them within 10 minutes. Admiral Thress had lost half his fleet within 20 minutes. He had lost the other half. He stood alone on his dying flagship as fires burned around him and his crew lay dead at their stations. And he watched through the cracked viewport as a single human vessel approached. It was small compared to his own ship, barely larger than a shuttle, but it had destroyed everything he commanded without taking a single hit in return. A communication request appeared on his damaged console. and he accepted it with trembling hands. Admiral Marcus Cole's face appeared on the screen. Calm and patient, as if this were nothing more than a routine conversation. "Admiral Thruss," Cole said quietly, "you commanded the attack on New Helsinki, did you not?" Thruss tried to summon his old arrogance, but found nothing left inside him but fear. It was a lawful military operation, he stammered. "Sanctioned by the High Arbiter himself. 12 million civilians," Cole replied. "Farmers and teachers and children who pose no threat to anyone. And you murdered them all because you could." Thruss had no response to that. "We are not going to kill you," Cole continued. "We want you to live so that you can tell your masters exactly what happened here today, so that they understand what is coming for them if they do not surrender." The human ship turned away and joined the rest of its fleet as they moved toward the Sara Primethris. Watched them go and realized that everything he had ever believed about the universe was wrong across Concord space. The same scene repeated itself 1,000 times. Human fleets appeared without warning around every military installation and reduced the mightiest war machine in galactic history to burning wreckage. In less than an hour, they did not attack civilian targets or population centers or trading vessels. They focused only on the instruments of war, the shipyards and weapons factories, and training academies and defense platforms that had made the Concord seem invincible. The Valorian homeworld possessed an orbital defense grid that had protected it for 10,000 years, 17 layers of shields, countless weapons platforms, and an early warning system that could detect threats from light years away, combined to create a fortress that no enemy had ever breached. These humans breached it in 11 minutes. They did not destroy the weapons platforms or collapse the shields through brute force. Instead, they simply walked through the defenses as if they were not there, their ships appearing inside the shield perimeter without triggering a single alarm. The defending fleet scrambled to intercept them, but the human vessels were already gone by the time the Valorian ships reached their positions. "They are toying with us," whispered the Valorian fleet commander as he watched his sensors struggle to track the phantom enemy. "They could destroy us at any moment, but they want us to know how helpless we are." He was correct on the Sara Prime. High Arbiter Kelvareth watched his empire crumble through the massive windows of his throne room. Human ships filled the sky above his capital city, thousands of black vessels hanging motionless, like birds of prey, deciding whether to strike. They had been there for 6 hours now, and they had not fired a single shot at the planet below that terrified him more than any bombardment could have. "Why do they not attack?" demanded one of his advisors. "What are they waiting for?" Kelvareth did not answer because he already knew. They were waiting for him to understand, waiting for the full weight of his helplessness to crush whatever pride he still possessed. A communication request appeared on his personal console, and he accepted it with hands that would not stop shaking. "High Arbiter," said a human woman with cold eyes and a voice like ice. "My name is Elena Vasquez, and I am the ambassador you humiliated in this very chamber." Kelvareth remembered her, the tiny creature who had begged for mercy. While his people laughed and cheered, she did not look like she was begging now. "I am coming to your world," Elena continued. "I will land at the Grand Chamber in 1 hour, and you will assemble every leader of every Concord species to hear what I have to say. And if I refuse?" Kelvareth asked. Though he already knew the answer, Elena smiled, and there was no warmth in it whatsoever. "Then we will stop being patient." The communication ended, and Kelvareth began issuing orders with frantic desperation. 1 hour later, a single human shuttle descended through the clouds above the Sara Prime and landed on the steps of the Grand Chamber. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped out alone, wearing a simple black uniform with no weapons and no guards. She walked up the steps and through the massive doors while thousands of alien soldiers watched from their positions around the building. None of them moved. To stop Hirsch entered the grand chamber where she had been mocked and humiliated, and she looked up at the galleries filled with the leaders of 200 species. They did not laugh this time. High Arbiter Calvarath sat on his throne of living metal, and Elena saw the fear in his golden eyes that he was trying so hard to hide. She walked to the speaking platform and stood exactly where she had stood before, and she let the silence stretch until even the bravest delegates began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. "You thought you knew us," Elena finally said, a voice echoing through the chamber. "You thought we were primitives playing with technology we did not understand. Children who needed to be taught their place by their betters." She looked directly at Calvarath. "You were wrong." The massive screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing images from across Concord space, burning shipyards and destroyed fleets and weapons platforms, reduced to scrap metal. "In 1 hour, we have dismantled the military power that took you 10,000 years to build," Elena continued. "We could do the same to your worlds if we chose. But we are not here to destroy you." She paused and let them wonder what she meant. "We are here to give you one chance to save yourselves." The grand chamber of the Concord had never known silence like this before. 200 species sat frozen in their seats, their eyes fixed on the small human woman who had somehow become the most terrifying being in the galaxy. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on the speaking platform with her hands clasped behind her back and let them feel the weight of their fear. She had stood in the same place not long ago, the begging for mercy that never came. While they laughed and cheered at her humiliation, now they would listen to every word she said or watch their worlds burn. "You called us primitive," Elena began, her voice cold and steady. "You called us children playing with dangerous toys. And you decided that the proper response to our existence was to slaughter 12 million of our people." She paused and looked up at the galleries, where delegates from 100 worlds refused to meet her gaze. New Helsinki was not a military target, she continued. It was a farming colony, a place where families grew food and raised children and dreamed of a better future among the stars. Her voice hardened. "You turned it into a graveyard because you wanted to teach us a lesson about knowing our place." High Arbiter Calvarath shifted on his throne, and Elena turned to face him directly. "We learned a lesson that day, High Arbiter, but it was not the one you intended." She walked closer to the throne, and the guards around it tensed but did not move to stop her. "We learned that the galaxy is ruled by those who have the power to enforce their will. And we learned that mercy is a privilege granted only to those who can take it by force." She stopped at the base of the throne and looked up at the creature who had ordered the death of millions. "We have that power now, and we are here to discuss the terms of your surrender." Calvarath tried to summon some fragment of his old authority. "You may have surprised us with your hidden fleet," he said with a voice that trembled slightly. "But the Concord has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. And we will not simply bow to a species that crawled out of the mud yesterday." Elena smiled. "And it was not a kind expression. You still do not understand, do you?" she asked softly. "You still believe this is a negotiation between equals?" She raised her hand, and the screens around the chamber changed to show 12 different worlds. "These are the 12 most powerful military installations in Concord space," Elena explained. "They house your reserve fleets, your weapons research facilities, your elite training academies, and the infrastructure that would allow you to rebuild your forces if given enough time." Calvarath stared at the screens with growing dread. "We have already evacuated every civilian from these worlds," Elena continued. "We gave them 24 hours to leave, and our ships ensured that every transport reached safety before we began." She lowered her hand. "Unlike you, we do not murder innocents to make a point. The delegates in the galleries began to murmur. Confused about what was happening, Elena turned to address them all. In exactly 30 seconds, you will see what happens to those who believe they can threaten humanity without consequence. The countdown appeared on every screen, and the chamber fell silent as the numbers ticked down toward 0 when it reached the end. The 12 worlds on the screens died. Humanity did not use ordinary weapons for this demonstration. They used something else entirely. Something that made the devastation of New Helsinki look like a gentle breeze. Reality itself seemed to tear open above each planet, and cascades of energy poured down from the wounds in space. Like waterfalls of pure destruction, mountains melted, oceans evaporated, and continents cracked apart under forces that should not have existed within minutes. 12 worlds that had stood for millennia were reduced to bowls of molten glass spinning slowly in the void. The screens went dark, and the silence in the chamber was absolute. Elena let them sit with what they had just witnessed before she spoke again. That is what we could do to every world in your Concord if we chose, she said calmly. Every city, every colony, every homeworld that is ever mocked humanity or cheered for our destruction. She looked around at the horrified faces in the galleries. But we are not. You. She walked back to the center of the speaking platform and addressed the full assembly. We did not come here to destroy you, or to conquer you, or to rule over you, as you have ruled over others, Elena declared. We came here to end the Concord and replace it with something better. Calvareth found his voice at last. What do you want from us? He demanded. Elena turned to face him. The Valorian Concord is dissolved effective immediately, she announced. Each species will govern its own territory without interference from any other, and the concept of lesser or greater species will be abolished forever. She raised her hand to count off the remaining terms. You will pay full reparations to the survivors of New Helsinki and their descendants for the next 10 generations. And you will build a memorial on the Valorian homeworld that tells the truth about what you did and why. Her voice grew harder. You will surrender all military vessels larger than a patrol craft, and you will agree to never develop weapons of mass destruction again. She paused. And most importantly, you will accept the new law of this galaxy. Any species that wages aggressive war against another, any species that commits atrocities against civilians, any species that believes might makes right will face humanity's judgment. Admiral Thress of the Colvery rose from his seat in the gallery, his pride finally overcoming his fear. You cannot police the entire galaxy, he shouted. You cannot watch every system and patrol every border forever. Elena turned to look at him with eyes that held no mercy. Can we not? She asked softly. She gestured to the windows of the Grand Chamber, where thousands of human ships still hung in the sky above the Sara Prime. We have been watching you for 300 years, Elena continued. We built a fleet capable of crushing your entire military in a single day, and you never even suspected we existed. She smiled that cold smile again. Do you really want to test whether we can watch you for another 300? Thress had no answer to that. Elena turned back to address the full assembly one final time. You have 1 hour to accept these terms, she announced. If you refuse, we will begin dismantling your civilization piece by piece until there is nothing left to resist. She walked toward the exit of the Grand Chamber, then stopped and looked back over her shoulder. Humanity offered you friendship once, and you answered with slaughter, she said quietly. We will not offer friendship again, but we will offer you survival. And I suggest you take it while you still can. She left the chamber, and behind her 200 species began to argue and plead and weep. But in the end, every single one of them voted to accept humanity's terms. They had seen what happened to those who refused. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Valorian Concord, And the galaxy was still learning how to breathe. Without chains, the Terran Accords had replaced the old order. A loose federation where every species governed itself, and no one claimed the right to rule over others. It was not a perfect system. And Elena Vasquez knew that better than anyone as she reviewed the morning reports in her office on Earth. She was Secretary General now, the highest position in human government. And some days the weight of that responsibility felt heavier than all the stars in the sky. The Culvery delegation is requesting additional time to complete their reparations payments, her aide announced. From the doorway Elena sighed and said, "Down her coffee?" "Denied," she replied. "They have the resources. And they have had 12 months to figure out the logistics. They will not be happy about that. They lost the right to happiness when they cheered for the massacre of our people," Elena said coldly. "Tell them their payment is due in 30 days. Or we will collect it ourselves." The aide nodded and disappeared to deliver the message. Elena turned to look out her window at the city below, where humans and aliens walked together through streets that would have been unimaginable just 2 years ago. Not all the former Concord species had accepted the new reality with grace. Some resented humanity deeply and plotted in secret for the day when they might reclaim their lost glory. Others simply feared the small pink creatures who had humbled the mightiest empire in galactic history. But a surprising few had begun to study humanity with genuine curiosity and even admiration across the galaxy. Young aliens enrolled in human universities and devoured human literature and watched human entertainment programs with fascination. They wanted to understand how a species so young and so small had become so powerful. The answer, they discovered, was not what they expected. Humanity had not been gifted with superior intelligence or blessed with miraculous technology from some ancient benefactor. They had simply refused to accept the limits that the universe tried to impose on them when they were told that faster-than-light travel was impossible. They found a way to make it work when they were told that certain weapons could not be built. They built them anyway when they were told that they would always be prey in a galaxy of predators. They made themselves into something that even the greatest predators learned to fear, that stubborn refusal to give up. That relentless drive to push beyond every boundary was the secret of human power, and it was something that the other species were beginning to understand. On the memorial world of New Helsinki, Admiral Marcus Cole stood alone among the endless rows of white stones that marked the graves of 12 million souls. He came here every week to read the names and remember the people who had died before humanity revealed its true strength. A small figure approached through the morning mist, and Cole turned to see a Valorian child standing a few meters away. She was young, probably no more than 6 or 7 years old by human standards, and her golden eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Are you the monster?" she asked in halting human speech. Cole knelt down so that he was at her eye level and shook his head slowly. "No, little one," he replied gently. "I am just a human." The child considered this for a moment. "My mother says humans are very scary," she said. "She says you destroyed our fleet and broke our empire and made everyone afraid." Cole nodded. "Your mother is right about what we did," he admitted. "But do you know why we did it?" The child shook her head. Cole gestured to the memorial stones, stretching out in every direction. "Because someone killed 12 million of our children," he explained quietly. "Farmers and teachers and little ones just like you who would never hurt anyone." The child's eyes went even wider. "That is very bad," she whispered. "Yes, it is," Cole agreed. "And we became scary because that was the only way to make sure it never happened again." The child thought about this for a long moment. "So you are not monsters all the time?" she asked finally. Cole smiled for the first time in what felt like years. "No, little one," he said. "We are only monsters when we have to be. The child's mother appeared at the edge of the memorial, calling her daughter's name with panic in her voice. The little Valorian ran back to her mother's arms. But she looked over her shoulder one more time and waved goodbye to the old human soldier. Cole waved back and turned to face the graves once more somewhere across the galaxy, in a research station orbiting a dead star at the edge of known space. A team of scientists made a discovery that would change everything. They had been studying ancient signal patterns from beyond the galactic rim, curious about what might exist in the vast darkness between the spiral arms. What they found made them forget how to breathe. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Kira Vasquez, Elena's younger sister and the station's lead researcher. "These signals are not random, they are communications." Her colleague stared at the data with trembling hands. Communications from whom? Yes, Kira translated the patterns using every linguistic algorithm at her disposal. And slowly a message began to emerge from the chaos. "We have observed your war," the message said. "We have watched the small ones humble the great ones. And we have decided that it is time to test the victors." The message repeated itself over and over, unchanged for what the computers estimated was at least 10,000 years. "Whatever sent this has been watching the galaxy for a very long time," Kira said quietly. "And now they know about us." She opened a secure channel to Earth and began transmitting her findings to her sister's office. 3 hours later, Elena sat in the command center of the Prometheus fleet and watched Admiral Cole read the same message she had just finished reviewing. "Another threat," Cole said wearily. "Just when I thought we might finally have some peace." Elena shook her head. "Not necessarily a threat," she replied. "The message says they want to test us, not destroy us." Cole raised an eyebrow. "And you think that is better?" Elena stood and walked to the main viewport where the stars stretched out in infinite silence. "I think that humanity has passed every test the galaxy has thrown at us so far," she said. "And I think we will pass this one too." Cole joined her at the viewport and looked out at the vast darkness. "What if they are stronger than we are?" He asked. Elena smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. "Then we will do what we have always done," she replied. "We will learn and adapt and grow until we are strong enough to meet them as equals." She turned to face the old admiral. "Wake up, Prometheus." "Marcus," she said, "we have new neighbors to meet." Cole nodded and began issuing orders to the fleet, somewhere beyond the galactic rim. Ancient eyes watched the small blue world called Earth and wondered what kind of creatures could rise so far so fast. They would learn soon enough, and when they did, they would understand why the galaxy had learned to whisper a warning to every child on every world under every star. Be kind, be fair, be just, or the humans will come.